The country, and it gets overshadowed. I'm like, no, we're not doing something right. And there's obviously entities that are working seemingly against our shine, and we can't have that. So I've been more adamant about wanting to be a part of it to glow up what SOLCON is and who it represents, because I think it deserves it. Like, more than anything, deserves it.
Yeah. So Victor, I love what you're saying. And JM, I want to hear from you too. So five years ago and more, for as long as you guys have been doing your stuff, and I've been, doing my scholarly work and what have you in and around Latinx comics, there's this sense that, one, we stop waiting.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing our own thing. We're clearing our own spaces. We're making our own expos, our own comics. We're telling our own stories. We're there workshopping with new gen kids of color. We're not waiting. Two, SOLCON as one of those kind of, hubs, those nexus, to bring us together,
right,
because we need to nourish each other. We need to know that we're out there, and something like SOLCON as that kind of space for us. JM, do you want to throw down?
Okay. Yeah, SOLCON, I've said it before, like my first time at SOLCON was the second one. And because I heard about it so much, I was like, oh man, I got to go to this. And once I went to that SOLCON event, I think I said it back then, and I'll say it now. This is like bigger than the Midwest. You know what I mean? This has the potential to be bigger than the Midwest. And in fact, it always was bigger than the Midwest, in the sense that SOLCON brought people from out of the U.S., brought people from from both coasts, not east, west, or hold on, east, west, whatever, you know what I mean? And then with South America, I mean, like we've SOLCON is international. It always has been, right? I mean, and now the fact, by proxy of it being virtual, it's even has more of a reach, you know what I mean? But 5 years, and it went by in a blink of an eye, and it's almost like it feels like we're just getting started.
Right.
Like we're just getting started. Like, oh, this is just the tip of the iceberg. And those educational institutions, I think, are finally like seeing the staple that SOLCON is, not just within the community of Ohio and Columbus, but in general. Academic wise, SOLCON is definitely, I believe, up there within, as far as on people's radar, and if not, it will be. So,
Victor, I know you're nodding your head like mad over there. Yeah.
It's one of those things where, like, looking at what SOLCON is already, and the framework, the foundation that everything is going to be built off of, as even though it has been a long 5 years, it's still just been 5 years with the scope of where we could go. And I think one of the things that I had to get accustomed to, specifically in my association with SOLCON, is the intent behind it. SOLCON does have a very specific scholarly intent that is different than almost any other comic convention of any caliber. Obviously, there are other ethnically oriented comic conventions, but they aren't necessarily geared towards the scholarly aspects. And I think it's something so very interesting that a school like The Ohio State University, a very mainstream institution, has this event as part of its showcase, as part of its almost a curriculum opportunity for its student body. I'm just going to throw this out there. As we're moving into a virtual space, I would love to see some HBCUs bring an aspect of SOLCON as part of their curriculum. That those are institutions that should host their own version of SOLCON, and invite different professors, creators, anybody that's of that space to talk, showcase, and do something. I mean, imagine SOLCON being a national tour that goes around from college to college, and we're presenting these aspects. There's plenty of ground for it. 5 years, we've got lots of proof as to what we could do, and the network of creators that would fit that bill. tremendous, absolutely tremendous.
Yeah, I love that. I love what you guys are talking about, taking what we've created together here, where as far as you guys and I know, the synergy, the first time that we have synergy between brown and black creators, industry professionals, and scholars coming together in a way that is like mind-blowing. And to take that model, you know, to other places, I think is, I think that's definitely part of our road into the future. And to share that. So last fall we added that scholarly symposium component, and I think that just like lifted the whole thing. It really brought to the fore what we've been trying to do, which is bring our communities together, scholarly, brown, black, and indigenous, and creators, right? And because what better place than comics,
right? Come on now.
It's
the
like
land of colors. Let's go.
Yeah. You guys tell me what you think, but comics is that place in ways that we can't. Film is still too difficult in terms of access. Too much kind of involved, too much money, too much all that stuff. Shakespeare is just like, I hate to break it to the folks, some of my colleagues, but it's just not where it's at. Right. Because we're you guys are Shakespeare's, right?
That's right.
It's little dense.
So yeah, this is it. And you know what? It's also like keeping the scholars on the toes, because we're not the sort of ciphers of the knowledge here. Like you guys know as much about comics, if not more, than I do, right? So like it's really like it's like the synergy, this kind of way of bringing communities together that I don't see in other spaces. JM, let's hear from you.
Absolutely.
Okay, I wanted to, because you touched on something, and so did Victor, regarding the future. Here's also where SOLCON is different from other diverse conventions or expos or ethnic expos. SOLCON also, not only is it scholarly, but it's also one of the few shows that I've seen that adamantly outreaches to the future scholars, the young people, bringing in those high schoolers, busing them in, feeding them, and getting them into our workshops so they can create and learn about comics and creating, and then also watching panels and seeing why our voices matter in the spectrum of not just comics, but of the world, of their own environment. And SOLCON's mission originally was what? To get these kids looking at college, right? How could HBCUs not, gravitate towards that? Because your HBCUs are all about those minds, like our legacies as Black people and people of color, are rooted in HBCUs and all that, and whatnot. You know what I mean? So reaching and appealing, bridging the gap from even high academia to the kids that are still like in school and are still wondering, what is there out for me? What's the point? I was one of those kids in school, like, what is the point? I'm not going to college. Whenever we go, everyone raise your hand. Who's going to college? Raise your hand. You're part of the future. I'm Gen X. I was like, WTF are you all talking about? I ain't doing shiz. Here I am in the MFA program going, I wonder if I should get a doctorate or not.
But comics helped give you that outlet, which is the important thing, man. That's absolutely it. No, you're right.
Comics brought me to, and SOLCON, comics brought me to this point, brought me to SOLCON, and SOLCON's bringing me to, SOLCON is the I would say the North Star of when I saw what could happen with the culture, things that I was struggling with, as well as my favorite medium, the way I express myself, comics. And I was like, wow, this is just more than four colors on a printed page, right?
It's way more than that.
Yeah.
Piggybacking off of what you guys have said, though, like, we're obviously in the hopefully getting towards the post-COVID world. But one of the greatest things about comics is that we have not stopped, especially on the independent side. We can still create, whereas movies, television, video games, any of that stuff has hit some sort of roadblock due to, social distancing or anything like that. Comics is a medium that can still continue and thrive because it's generally how we're creating this content anyway. We're by ourselves, we're creating things, and we're throwing it out in the void and hoping that we get some love back. And I think that is one of the things that we can showcase through SOLCON with that younger generation is you can create that stuff now. It's not even a matter of when I grow up, I want to be ... You can create content right now and find an audience of like-minded people that understand what you're going through, feel the same way you do, and you're telling stories to them that they relate to, and then they can respond to you, and it grows everybody. I think that's like one of the greatest things, one of the biggest attributes that I think that SOLCON has tapped into, but still hasn't even scratched the surface of yet, is that by aiming at the kids, you're rebuilding that future readership that we've lost in the mainstream market, and at the same time are empowering kids to think beyond their momentary circumstance. They can look at the future and say, there is something for me out there. It could be art, it could be stories, it could be in editing, it could be in any number of things, but they're seeing themselves in tomorrow as opposed to just, being swallowed up by the woes of today.
And if you've noticed, if you noticed that the talent and the people we bring to the symposium and to SOLCON and who we bring to Columbus in general with other shows as well, with CXC and space and all that, are the authors, the creators that are behind the books of YA. YA is still huge. YA is not suffering. Young adults and scholastic and graphics and so literature, actual publishing houses that aren't focused around just comics that have had a regular publishing arm, not only pay better than the mainstream ones, but they also have made their way into schools, so to where Title I schools will still have kids just reading a worn copy of a YA thing. Alfonso Jones, Smile, whatever. So between YA having taken root again with our youth in schools and what SOLCON does, it's also potential for SOLCON, who's already bringing in those authors and those creators anyways, to work with those publishing houses as well. So we have the scholarly element. We also have teachers are all teaching graphic novels now in school, right? So I mean, there's definitely there's potential chemistry there as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I love that. I think that JM, that's going to be your directive for 2021 is to bring industry teachers and SOLCON artists, creators together.
I want to make it a mandatory field trip. If you're in Columbus and you are a school, which is why we're going to need a bigger venue. We need to take over that park in the middle between Hale Hall and the parking garage. Everyone wants to park to go to the OSU football games.
Big marquees.
Yeah, where they have all the hot dogs and stuff like that? We're going to have to expand SOLCON to something of that enormity because
bring it on.
Because of how many potential field trips we could do with SOLCON, with the surrounding schools.
I love it. So while we're on the topic, JM and then Victor, tell us, I know you both, with the pandemic, as Victor was saying, it hasn't stopped us. In fact, it's maybe even kind of intensified our reach into the world, right? Yeah. Can you, Victor, I know you're doing going nuts with online workshops and creative spaces to teach others. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And then JM, maybe you can follow.
Sure. So I've been doing a lot of moderating for the virtual components of the more, we'll say, advanced or evolving Comic Cons in the market, where physical conventions have, for the most part, shut down across the board. San Diego, New York, all these different shows that had prominent, presentations. in a physical space have shut down, and they've moved to a virtual platform. And I've started working predominantly with Wizard World, who I had a long-standing relationship with, and started doing more of the virtual panels with their celebs. But in between there, they actually had an invite for me to bring in my You Create Comics line, and I'll do free presentations of some of the content that I've created through that imprint, where we're teaching about comics, how to make your own characters, what are comics, what are the different parts and pieces of comics, and how do they work, so that people can be a part of that. Coming up, I have an event called Comic Book in a Day that I'm doing with Nickel Plate Arts, which is located in Indiana. Where through the day, it's a series of workshops. It's a day-long challenge of creating, I think, up to 8-page comic book in a single day setting, and still just trying to encourage people to create as much as they can, as often as they can, with different tools and things that they can become familiar with. And I've seen that with my own You Create presentations, that there is that opportunity to have a virtual presentation, so that, again, we don't have to stop. Obviously, with most of the schools here in Columbus moving to a virtual platform at the onset of the school year, that's one of the things that I'm beefing up for, is how do I offer virtual content that schools can order, still be a participatory aspect of their curriculum. They're going to be there's going to be a deficiency in some level where students can't go to school, so there's a lot of supplies that they won't have. And so I'm currently working on ways to come up with cheaper alternatives to the general platform of You Create materials, even though I aim for You Create to be a little bit more inexpensive and therefore far more accessible. I want to make it even more so accessible for students that, you're not getting to go to school. You are stuck at home, and finding ways that I can work with teachers, curriculums, educators to bring that content to their virtual space and still find that educational value. I think that is the future. That is where we're going, at least for the near future, while we're still under the COVID situation.
And Victor, if people want to find that You Create, is that on YouTube? Where is that space?
You actually can look it up. You Create, that's the letter U, CRE8 comics.com. And you can see we have a listing of programming. And basically what we would do is we would set up a Zoom, and I would, from my studio space like this, instruct your students. And it would be something where as a virtual live presentation, we send you material beforehand, and I instruct through the classroom, through a virtual space, all the things that I would do live, and it becomes a very fun engagement. Over the summer, I've worked with the Goddard School to do a presentation. There's lots of folks that are, adept enough and beefed up in their virtual capacities to be able to do this. And I think that's where everything should go, because it will ultimately allow for far more, inclusion of other things. If you have a guest that's in California, Canada, Europe, whatever, you don't have to pay to bring them here. Virtually, you can, connect with them and still make something work. And so I think that's part of the wave of the future for our students learning.
Love it. And JM, I know you're really actively doing this as well. Can you tell us about what you're doing?
Yeah. So, as far as virtual goes, I've slowed down on that front, because as I finish up my MFA, so I was an active teacher in the field, in the school, teaching art and bringing Victor's You Create materials to the classroom, as well as field testing a lot of my own curriculum, a lot of just art in general, and basic foundational principles of Ivan Brunetti, as far as other well-known comic creators. And I got to see what works and what didn't work. The students taught me just as much as I attempted to teach them, but here's what also needs to happen. While the virtual potential continues to escalate, and evolve, there's something also that needs to happen. And this involves beyond not just us, but the whole community, the whole changing of the mindset. And that is back to grassroots, in person, getting these students the physical materials to be able to optimize what Victor is doing, with virtual. So there are still teachers who have to use donors choose to try and get their own supplies. Being a former teacher, as my wife is still a teacher, having to go out there and try and hustle like a politician and try and get money just to get pencils, crayons, markers, basic supplies, so that these students can actually work, and especially being home, stuck at home, having something that to like, how did we all fall in love with comics and art and drawing or creating in general? We may have went outside till 8 o'clock, but we also spent a lot of time sitting on their living room floor, coloring, drawing, or reading. Obviously, that people don't. Some communities don't have that opportunity, but if they're having to be stuck inside, we need to get them the materials, and that involves the community. That can't just fall on teachers. That has to fall on legislatures. That has to fall on the people that are supposed to be representing the community or being paid the big bucks. They have to quit defunding education, and they have to actually put something in. So until they can step their game up and get their head out of their suitcase or their briefcase, then it's going to have to fall on the rest of us in the community to find ways of funding basic materials to get into those communities, to get in those kids' hands, so they could take advantage of that internet connection. Right. Of when Victor's doing something, or SOLCON or a convention, there should be virtual workshops where it's like, hey, these kids consume YouTube and TikTok anyways, so why are we not on there giving them exactly. Access to stuff? But I mean, at the same time, it has to be practical. We have to get them real materials. I still have a whole of materials that I was actually lucky enough to raise that I have to go back into the community and pass out, which I'll be doing here starting next week again. I had to take a break from it, but and honestly, it feels good to knock on that door and give that kid some snacks.
So this goes back to us just doing it and getting business done. We see a need. We see right now, especially, kids need to be doing things with fingers and their minds and their imagination. So JM, I'm going to throw this one at you again. SOLCON in the community 2020, 21. I am asking if you can run a crowd fund or a Kickstarter so we can pay for not just one or two, but like a boatload of materials that we can get out to the community.
I think Victor, what did you create line? Victor's Mr. Kickstarter. Trust me.
I don't know if I'm Mr. Kickstarter.
Yeah, I'm putting him on the spot too.
All right. We'll talk about this after the show.
Idea, though.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. Let's get the community involved.
Yes.
Because in full disclosure, I did do something similar last year where I ran a Kickstarter, and again, the hook of it was to start small, fund one school presentation, and ended up funding 15. So if SOLCON can do something similar, that would be huge, absolutely huge. A SOLCON kit, and we take it around to X amount of students with a video setup, all of that. That would be mind blowing.
Absolutely. Okay, Victor, I am anointing you the SOLCON Kickstarter kit, man.
We'll do it. We'll do it.
So, as we kind of wind this down, we're looking at SOLCON just around the corner, September 10th, 11th, and 12th. It's going to be virtual. It's going to be amazing. JM already launched us with the Mixing Medias, which was awesome. Fantastic. I love seeing JM there in the glass blowing, glass making, creating space. But yeah, what are you guys looking forward to for 2020? And what do people have? What can we look forward to 2021? Victor.
Victor.
So I'm looking forward to the amount of stories that we have to tell in 2020. This has been a very mind-opening sort of year. It's full of experiences, and I can't wait to see how we as a community respond and showcase how this year has affected us and our creativity. I know for myself, it's influenced some of the things that I've put out already. It definitely is going to influence things that I will be putting out. In fact, just to put him out there, Mike Watson, my brother, who I love, I've written his flagship title, Hot Shot. He's actually changing Hot Shot's costume in light of everything that's happened in 2020, so that on site that it's a black man. That's never been his showcase before. And that's such a huge thing to see how the timing of everything has influenced and encouraged him to say, no, Hotshot obviously is a Black hero. Let's show it more so than just talk about it in any way that we ever have before. I think that's brilliant. I can't wait to see what 2020 we're going to be, talking about. I think we're all going to have something very interesting to say. 2021, I think, will be us kicking down the door of opportunity and really taking things to that higher of a level. So if we do a Kickstarter to do more, SOLCON in the community, I could see us doing an amazing magazine that talks about the different creators that we've been in association with, the history of it, any sort of curriculum orientation. Literally, one of the first things that I ever saw from a curriculum standpoint was a Wizard magazine that had a list of collegiate schools that taught graphic novels in their curriculum. I would love to see a SOLCON piece that says, here are some books that we would recommend for these studies. So if you're institution that studies this thing, add this to your curriculum. That's the kind of level that we would have on a mainstream, outreach piece, on a super literature sort of piece, and really kind of get people more in the know of what it is that we have, what we do, and who we are as a community. I think that's going to be the future, and we're gonna do that very well.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, JM.
So, come November, one or two things is going to happen. You're going to have a decision that's made, and then going into 2021. Either it's going to be a breath of fresh air. There's going to be a sigh of relief worldwide. Either that option A is going to happen, and then people are going to get a small respite to breathe real quick, relief, and then that means opportunity is going to be even more so. But you're gonna be, the momentum of that relief is going to give way to, okay, now it's time to get to work, and then people are going to feel like they have the space again to be able to go in and accomplish things and to set things right. If we're going to set things right, let's set them right for real, right? Okay, let's get them right on the right track this time. If this is a reset button, if option A is a reset button, then let's blow in the game cartridge, clean it out, put that sucker back in.
That's right.
All game heads know what I'm talking about, and hit the reset button. If not, if things go south and things go in option B, then as Victor said, our work's going to be even more important, and we're going to have to buckle down, and we're going to have to kick some doors down, and we're going to have to put on, these bootstraps that they always talk about. I don't know about bootstraps, but we're going to have to lace up some combat boots, and we're going to have to kick some doors down. And the fight's going to be even harder to educate and to get. SOLCON's going to be even more important, more needed to try and reach the communities, from scholarly, academic, politically, to even to that kid in the neighborhood. That teacher in that classroom is always asking, what can I do for my kids? That's where SOLCON should exist. Yep. So.
Wow, inspiring. Thank you both. SOLCON would not be what it is today if without you guys. We are in this together. We will be in this all the way till the end. I love being a part of your community, and thank you both.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Always.
Ready.